Wikipedia wik-ih-PEE-dee-ə or wik-ih is a multilingual free online encyclopedia written and maintained by a community of volunteers through open collaboration in a wiki-based editing system. Its editors are known as Wikipedians. Wikipedia is the largest and most read reference work in history. It is consistently one of the 10 most popular websites ranked by SimilarWeb and formerly Alexa. As of 2022, Wikipedia was ranked the 7th most popular site. It is hosted by the Wikimedia Foundation, an American non-profit organization funded mainly through donations. On January 15, 2001, Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger launched Wikipedia. Sanger coined its name as a blend of wiki and encyclopedia. Wales was influenced by the spontaneous order ideas associated with Friedrich Hayek and the Austrian School of Economics after being exposed to these ideas by Austrian economist and Mises Institute senior fellow Mark Thornton. Initially available only in English, versions in other languages were quickly developed. Its combined editions comprise more than 59 million articles, attracting around 2 billion unique device visits per month and more than 17 million edits per month as of November 2020. In 2006, Time magazine stated that the policy of allowing anyone to edit had made Wikipedia the biggest encyclopedia in the world. Wikipedia has received praise for its enablement of the democratization of knowledge, extent of coverage, unique structure, culture, and reduced degree of commercial bias, but criticism for exhibiting systemic bias, particularly gender bias against women and alleged ideological bias. The reliability of Wikipedia was frequently criticized in the 2000s, but has improved over time, as Wikipedia has been generally praised in the late 2010s and early 2020s. The website's coverage of controversial topics such as American politics and major events like the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine has received substantial media attention. It has been censored by world governments, ranging from specific pages to the entire site. In April 2018, Facebook and YouTube announced that they would help users detect fake news by suggesting fact-checking links to related Wikipedia articles. Articles on breaking news are often accessed as a source of frequently updated information about those events. Name: the Americas are usually accepted as having been named after the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci by the German cartographers Martin Waldseemüller and Matthias Ringman. Vespucci, who explored South America between 1497 and 1502, was the first European to suggest that the Americas were not the East Indies, but a different landmass previously unknown by Europeans. In 1507, Waldseemüller produced a world map, in which he placed the word America on the continent of South America, in the middle of what is today Brazil. He explained the rationale for the name in the accompanying book Cosmographia Introductio, ab Americo Inventor, Quasi Americitarum Civ Americam. What was known about North American continent was referred to as Parias above what is today Mexico. A 1553 world map published by Petrus Apianus in his Carta Cosmographica, cum ventorum propria natura et operatione, North America was called Bacaliarum, meaning realm of the codfish, in reference to the abundance of codfish on the east coast. For Waldseemüller, no one should object to the naming of the land after its discoverer. He used the Latinized version of Vespucci's name, but in its feminine form America, following the examples of Europa, Asia, and Africa. Later, other mapmakers extended the name America to the northern continent, dropping the usage of Parias. In 1538, Gerard Mercator used America on his map of the world for all the Western Hemisphere. Some argue that because the convention is to use the surname for naming discoveries, the derivation from Amerigo Vespucci could be put in question. In 1874, Thomas Belt published the indigenous name of the Aymarisque Mountains of Central America. The next year, Jules Marcou suggested that the name of the continent stemmed from that of the mountain range. Marcou corresponded with Augustus Le Plongeon, who wrote, "The name America or Amerique in the Mayan language means, a country of perpetually strong wind, or the land of the wind, and, the kin mean, a spirit that breathes, life itself." Mercator on his map called North America America or New India. The Spanish Empire called its territories in North and South America Las Indias. The state body overseeing them was the Council of the Indies. Span extent/span. None. Regions. Geographically, the North American continent has many regions and subregions. These include cultural, economic, and geographic regions. Economic regions included those formed by trade blocs, such as the North American Trade Agreement Bloc and Central American Trade Agreement. Linguistically and culturally, the continent could be divided into Anglo-America and Latin America. Anglo-America includes most of Northern America, Belize, and Caribbean islands with English-speaking populations. The southern part of the North American continent is composed of two regions. These are Central America and the Caribbean. The north of the continent maintains recognized regions as well. In contrast to the common definition of North America, which encompasses the whole continent, the term North America is sometimes used to refer only to Mexico, Canada, the United States, and Greenland. The term Northern America refers to the northernmost countries and territories of North America, the United States, Bermuda, St. Pierre and Miquelon, Canada, and Greenland. Although the term does not refer to a unified region, Middle America not to be confused with the Midwestern United States groups the regions of Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. North America's largest countries by land area, Canada and the United States, also have well-defined and recognized regions. In the case of Canada, these are Atlantic Canada, Central Canada, Canadian Prairies, the British Columbia coast, and Northern Canada. These regions also contain many subregions. In the case of the United States and in accordance with the U.S. Census Bureau definitions, these regions are New England, Mid-Atlantic, South Atlantic states, East-North Central states, West-North Central states, East-South Central states, West-South Central states, Mountain states, and Pacific states. Regions shared between both nations include the Great Lakes region. Megalopolises have formed between both nations in the case of the Pacific Northwest and the Great Lakes megaregion. Countries, dependencies, and other territories. Natural characteristics. Span geography/span. None. Geology. Geologic history. Canadian geology. United States geology. Central American geology. Climate. North America is a very large continent that extends from north of the Arctic Circle to south of the Tropic of Cancer. Greenland, along with the Canadian Shield, is tundra with average temperatures ranging from 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, but central Greenland is composed of a very large ice sheet. This tundra radiates throughout Canada, but its border ends near the Rocky Mountains and at the end of the Canadian Shield, near the Great Lakes. Climate west of the Cascade Range is described as being temperate weather with average precipitation 20 inches. Climate in coastal California is described to be Mediterranean, with average temperatures in cities like San Francisco ranging from 57 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit over the course of the year. Stretching from the east coast to eastern North Dakota, and stretching down to Kansas, is the humid continental climate featuring intense seasons, with a large amount of annual precipitation, with places like New York City averaging 50 inches. Starting at the southern border of the humid continental climate and stretching to the Gulf of Mexico is the humid subtropical climate. This area has the wettest cities in the contiguous United States, with annual precipitation reaching 67 inches in Mobile, Alabama. stretching from the borders of the humid continental and subtropical climates, and going west to the Sierra Nevada, south to the southern tip of Durango, north to the border with tundra climate. The steppe/desert climates are the driest in the United States. Highland climates cut from north to south of the continent, where subtropical or temperate climates occur just below the tropics, as in central Mexico and Guatemala. Tropical climates appear in the island regions and in the subcontinent's bottleneck. Precipitation patterns vary across the region, and as such rainforest, monsoon, and savanna types can be found, with rains and high temperatures throughout the year. Found in countries and states bathed by the Caribbean Sea or to the south of the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean. Ecology. Notable North American fauna include the bison, black bear, jaguar, cougar, prairie dog, turkey, pronghorn, raccoon, coyote, and monarch butterfly. Notable plants that were domesticated in North America include tobacco, maize, squash, tomato, sunflower, blueberry, avocado, cotton, chili pepper, and vanilla. History. Pre-Columbian. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have many creation myths by which they assert that they have been present on the land since its creation, but there is no evidence that humans evolved there. The specifics of the initial settlement of the Americas by ancient Asians are subject to ongoing research and discussion. The traditional theory has been that hunters entered the Bering Land Bridge between eastern Siberia and present-day Alaska from 27,000 to 14,000 years ago. A growing viewpoint is that the first American inhabitants sailed from Beringia some 13,000 years ago, with widespread habitation of the Americas during the end of the last glacial period, in what is known as the late glacial maximum, around 12,500 years ago. The oldest petroglyphs in North America date from 15,000 to 10,000 years before present. Genetic research and anthropology indicate additional waves of migration from Asia via the Bering Strait during the early Middle Holocene. Before contact with Europeans, the natives of North America were divided into many different polities, from small bands of a few families to large empires. They lived in several culture areas, which roughly correspond to geographic and biological zones and give a good indication of the main way of life of the people who lived there. Native groups can also be classified by their language family. Peoples with similar languages did not always share the same material culture, nor were they always allies. Anthropologists think that the Inuit of the high Arctic came to North America much later than other native groups, as evidenced by the disappearance of Dorset culture artifacts from the archaeological record, and their replacement by the Thule people. During the thousands of years of native habitation on the continent, cultures changed and shifted. One of the oldest yet discovered is the Clovis culture in modern New Mexico. Later groups include the Mississippian culture and related mound-building cultures, found in the Mississippi River Valley, and the Pueblo culture of what is now the Four Corners. The more southern cultural groups of North America were responsible for the domestication of many common crops now used around the world, such as tomatoes, squash, and maize. As a result of the development of agriculture in the south, many other cultural advances were made there. The Mayans developed a writing system, built huge pyramids and temples, had a complex calendar, and developed the concept of zero around 400 CE. The first recorded European references to North America are in Norse sagas, where it is referred to as Vinland. The earliest verifiable instance of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact by any European culture with the North America mainland has been dated to around 1000 CE. The site, situated at the northernmost extent of the island named Newfoundland, has provided unmistakable evidence of Norse settlement. Norse explorer Leif Erikson is thought to have visited the area. Erikson was the first European to make landfall on the continent. The Mayan culture was still present in southern Mexico and Guatemala when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, but political dominance in the area had shifted to the Aztec Empire, whose capital city Tenochtitlan was located further north in the Valley of Mexico. The Aztecs were conquered in 1521 by Hernán Cortés. Post-contact, 1492–1910. During the so-called Age of Discovery, Europeans explored overseas and staked claims to various parts of North America, much of which was already settled by indigenous peoples. Upon Europeans' arrival in the New World, indigenous peoples had a variety of reactions, including curiosity, trading, cooperation, resignation, and resistance. The indigenous population declined substantially following European arrival, primarily due to the introduction of Eurasian diseases, such as smallpox, to which the indigenous peoples lacked immunity, and because of violent conflicts with Europeans. Indigenous culture changed significantly and their affiliation with political and cultural groups also changed. Several linguistic groups died out, and others changed quite quickly. On the southern east coast of North America, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, who had accompanied Columbus's second voyage, visited and named in 1513 La Florida. As the colonial period unfolded, Spain, England, and France appropriated and claimed extensive territories in North America's eastern and southern coastlines. Spain established permanent settlements on the Caribbean islands of Hispaniola and Cuba in the 1490s, building cities, putting the resident indigenous populations to work, raising crops for Spanish settlers and panning gold to enrich the Spaniards. Much of the indigenous population died due to disease and overwork, spurring the Spaniards on to claim new lands and peoples. An expedition under the command of Spanish settler, Hernán Cortés, sailed westward in 1519 to what turned out to be the mainland in Mexico. With local indigenous allies, the Spanish conquered the Aztec Empire in central Mexico in 1521. Spain then established permanent cities in Mexico, Central America, and Spanish South America in the 16th century. Once Spaniards conquered the high civilization of the Aztecs and Incas, the Caribbean was a backwater of the Spanish Empire. Other European powers began to intrude on areas that Spain had claimed, including the Caribbean islands. France took the western half of Hispaniola and developed Saint-Domingue as a cane sugar-producing colony worked by black slave labor. Britain took Barbados and Jamaica. The Dutch and Danes also took islands previously claimed by Spain. Britain did not begin settling on the North American mainland until 100 years after the first Spanish settlements, since it sought first to control nearby Ireland. The first permanent English settlement was in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, and then further settler colonial establishments on the east coast of the continent from is now Georgia up to Massachusetts, forming the 13 colonies. The English did not establish settlements east of the St. Lawrence Valley in what would become Canada until well after the War of Independence. English early permanent settlements were St. John's, Newfoundland in 1630 and Halifax, Nova Scotia in 1749. The first permanent French settlement was in Quebec City, Quebec in 1608. In the British victory the 7 Years' War, France ceded to Britain its claims east of the Mississippi River in 1763. Spain gained rights to the territories west of Mississippi, now acting as a border. French so-called colonists that had first settled the Illinois country after several generations of experience on the new continent migrated over the Mississippi in the absence of Spanish occupants while leveraging earlier Louisiana French settlements around the Gulf of Mexico. These early French settlers, partnering with Midwest indigenous tribes and their mixed ancestry descendants, would precede the westward push and guide through waves of followers all the way to the Pacific. In the late 18th and early the 13 colonies on the North Atlantic coast declared independence in 1776, fighting a protracted war of independence with the aid of Britain's enemies France and Spain. becoming the United States of America. The new nation steadily attempted to increase its territory. By that time, Russians were already well established on the Pacific Northwest northern coastline with maritime fur trade activities supported by active settlements. As a result, Spanish were showing more interest in controlling the trade on the Pacific coast and mapped most of its coastline. The first Spanish settlements were attempted in Alta California during that period. Numerous overland explorations associated with voyagers, fur trade, and United States-led expeditions were reaching the Pacific at various latitudes around the turn of the century. In 1803 Napoleon Bonaparte sold France's remaining claims in North America, west of the Mississippi River, to the United States, in a deal named the Louisiana Purchase. Spain and the United States settled their western boundary dispute in 1819 in the Adams-Onis Treaty. Mexico fought a lengthy war for independence from Spain, winning it for Mexico and Central America in 1821. The U.S. sought further westward expansion and fought the Mexican-American War, gaining a vast territory that first Spain and then Mexico claimed but which they did not effectively control. Much of the area was in fact dominated by indigenous peoples, which did not recognize the claims of Spain, France, or the United States. Russia sold its North American claims, which included Alaska, to the U.S. in 1867. Also in 1867, settler colonies in eastern North America were unified as the Dominion of Canada. The U.S. sought to dig a canal across the Isthmus of Panama, a part of Colombia, and aided Panamanians in a war to separate it from Colombia. The U.S. carved out the Panama Canal Zone, over which it claimed sovereignty. After decades of work on the Panama Canal was completed, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in 1913. Demographics. Economically, Canada and the United States are the wealthiest and most developed nations in the continent, followed by Mexico, a newly industrialized country. The countries of Central America and the Caribbean are at various levels of economic and human development. For example, small Caribbean island nations, such as Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Antigua and Barbuda, have a higher GDP per capita than Mexico due to their smaller populations. Panama and Costa Rica have a significantly higher Human Development Index and GDP than the rest of the Central American nations. Additionally, despite Greenland's vast resources in oil and minerals, much of them remain untapped, and the island is economically dependent on fishing, tourism, and subsidies from Denmark. Nevertheless, the island is highly developed. Demographically, North America is ethnically diverse. Its three main groups are whites, mestizos, and blacks. There is a significant minority of indigenous Americans and Asians among other less numerous groups. Languages. The dominant languages in North America are English, Spanish, and French. Danish is prevalent in Greenland alongside Greenlandic, and Dutch is spoken side by side local languages in the Dutch Caribbean. The term Anglo-America is used to refer to the Anglophone countries of the Americas, namely Canada and the United States, but also sometimes Belize and parts of the tropics, especially the Commonwealth Caribbean. Latin America refers to the other areas of the Americas where the Romance languages, derived from Latin, of Spanish and Portuguese, predominate. The other republics of Central America, part of the Caribbean, Mexico, and most of South America, and the Falkland Islands. The French language has historically played a significant role in North America and now retains a distinctive presence in some regions. Canada is officially bilingual. French is the official language of the province of Quebec, where 95% of the people speak it as either their first or second language, and it is co-official with English in the province of New Brunswick. Other French-speaking locales include the province of Ontario, the province of Manitoba, the French West Indies and Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, as well as the U.S. state of Louisiana, where French is also an official language. Haiti is included with this group based on historical association, but Haitians speak both Creole and French. Similarly, French and French Antillean Creole is spoken in Saint Lucia and the Commonwealth of Dominica alongside English. A significant number of indigenous languages are spoken in North America, with 372,000 people in the United States speaking an indigenous language at home, about 225,000 in Canada and roughly 6 million in Mexico. In the United States and Canada, there are approximately 150 surviving indigenous languages of the 300 spoken prior to European contact. Religions. Christianity is the largest religion in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. According to a 2012 Pew Research Center survey, 77% of the population considered themselves Christians. Christianity also is the predominant religion in the 23 dependent territories in North America. The United States has the largest Christian population in the world, with nearly 247 million Christians, although other countries have higher percentages of Christians among their populations. Mexico has the world's second largest number of Catholics, surpassed only by Brazil. A 2015 study estimates about 493,000 Christian believers from a Muslim background in North America, most of them belonging to some form of Protestantism. According to the same study, the religiously unaffiliated make up about 17% of the population of Canada and the United States. Those with no religious affiliation make up about 24% of the United States population, and 24% of Canada's total population. Canada, the United States and Mexico host communities of Jews, Buddhists, and Muslims. The largest number of Jews can be found in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The United States hosts the largest Muslim population in North America with 2.7 million or 0.9%, while Canada hosts about 1 million Muslim or 3.2% of the population. While in Mexico there were 3,700 Muslims in the country. In 2012, UT San Diego estimated U.S. practitioners of Buddhism at 1.2 million people, of whom 40% are living in Southern California. The predominant religion in Mexico and Central America is Christianity. Beginning with the Spanish colonization of Mexico in the 16th century, Roman Catholicism was the only religion permitted by Spanish Crown and Catholic Church. A vast campaign of religious conversion, the so-called spiritual conquest, was launched to bring indigenous into the Christian fold. The Inquisition was established to assure orthodox belief and practice. The Catholic Church remained an important institution, so that even after political independence, Roman Catholicism remained the dominant religion. Since the 1960s, there has been an increase in other Christian groups, particularly Protestantism, as well as other religious organizations, and individuals identifying themselves as having no religion. Also, Christianity is the predominant religion in the Caribbean. Other religious groups in the region are Hinduism, Islam, Rastafari, and Afro-American religions such as Santeria and Vodou. Populace. North America is the fourth most populous continent after Asia, Africa, and Europe. Its most populous country is the United States with 329.7 million persons. The second largest country is Mexico with a population of 112.3 million. Canada is the third most populous country with 37.0 million. The majority of Caribbean island nations have national populations under a million, though Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago each have populations higher than a million. Greenland has a small population of 55,984 for its massive size, and therefore, it has the world's lowest population density at 0.026 pop/km2. While the United States, Canada, and Mexico maintain the largest populations, large city populations are not restricted to those nations. There are also large cities in the Caribbean. The largest cities in North America, by far, are Mexico City and New York. These cities are the only cities on the continent to exceed 8 million, and 2 of 3 in the Americas. Next in size are Los Angeles, Toronto, Chicago, Havana, Santo Domingo, and Montreal. Cities in the Sun Belt regions of the United States, such as those in Southern California and Houston, Phoenix, Miami, Atlanta, and Las Vegas, are experiencing rapid growth. These causes included warm temperatures, retirement of baby boomers, large industry, and the influx of immigrants. Cities near the United States border, particularly in Mexico, are also experiencing large amounts of growth. Most notable is Tijuana, a city bordering San Diego that receives immigrants from all over Latin America and parts of Europe and Asia. Yet as cities grow in these warmer regions of North America, they are increasingly forced to deal with the major issue of water shortages. 8 of the top 10 metropolitan areas are located in the United States. These metropolitan areas all have a population of above 5.5 million and include the New York City metropolitan area, Los Angeles metropolitan area, Chicago metropolitan area, and the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. Whilst the majority of the largest metropolitan areas are within the United States, Mexico is host to the largest metropolitan area by population in North America, Greater Mexico City. Canada also breaks into the top 10 largest metropolitan areas, with the Toronto metropolitan area having 6 million people. The proximity of cities to each other on the Canada-United States border and Mexico-United States border has led to the rise of international metropolitan areas. These urban agglomerations are observed at their largest and most productive in Detroit, Windsor, and San Diego, Tijuana, and experience large commercial, economic, and cultural activity. The metropolitan areas are responsible for millions of dollars of trade dependent on international freight. In Detroit, Windsor, the Border Transportation Partnership study in 2004 concluded $13 billion was dependent on the Detroit-Windsor International Border Crossing, while in San Diego, Tijuana, freight at the Otay Mesa port of entry was valued at $20 billion. North America has also been witness to the growth of megapolitan areas. In the United States exists 11 megaregions that transcend international borders and comprise Canadian and Mexican metropolitan regions. These are the Arizona Sun Corridor, Cascadia, Florida, Front Range, Great Lakes Megalopolis, Gulf Coast, Northeast, Northern California, Piedmont Atlantic, Southern California, and the Texas Triangle. Canada and Mexico are also the home of megaregions. These include the Quebec City-Windsor Corridor, Golden Horseshoe, both of which are considered part of the Great Lakes Megalopolis, and the Central Mexico Megalopolis. Traditionally, the largest megaregion has been considered the Boston-Washington, D.C. Corridor, or the Northeast, as the region is one massive contiguous area. Yet megaregion criterion have allowed the Great Lakes Megalopolis to maintain status as the most populated region, being home to 53,768,125 people in 2000. The top 10 largest North American metropolitan areas by population as of 2013, based on national census numbers from the United States and census estimates from Canada and Mexico. 2011 census figures. Economy. North America's GDP per capita was evaluated in October 2016 by the International Monetary Fund to be $41,830, making it the richest continent in the world, followed by Oceania. Canada, Mexico, and the United States have significant and multifaceted economic systems. The United States has the largest economy of all three countries and in the world. In 2016, the U.S. had an estimated per capita gross domestic product of $57,466 according to the World Bank, and is the most technologically developed economy of the three. The United States services sector comprises 77% of the country's GDP, industry comprises 22% and agriculture comprises 1.2%. The U.S. economy is also the fastest growing economy in North America and the Americas as a whole, with the highest GDP per capita in the Americas as well. Canada shows significant growth in the sectors of services, mining, and manufacturing. Canada's per capita GDP was estimated at $44,656 and it had the 11th largest GDP in 2014. Canada's services sector comprises 78% of the country's GDP, industry comprises 20% and agriculture comprises 2%. Mexico has a per capita GDP of $16,111 and as of 2014 is the 15th largest GDP in the world. Being a newly industrialized country, Mexico maintains both modern and outdated industrial and agricultural facilities and operations. Its main sources of income are oil, industrial exports, manufactured goods, electronics, heavy industry, automobiles, construction, food, banking, and financial services. The North American economy is well defined and structured in three main economic areas. These areas are the North American Free Trade Agreement, Caribbean Community and Common Market, and the Central American Common Market. Of these trade blocs, the United States takes part in two. In addition to the larger trade blocs, there is the Canada-Costa Rica Free Trade Agreement among numerous other free trade relations, often between the larger, more developed countries and Central American and Caribbean countries. The North America Free Trade Agreement forms one of the four largest trade blocs in the world. Its implementation in 1994 was designed for economic homogenization with hopes of eliminating barriers of trade and foreign investment between Canada, the United States and Mexico. While Canada and the United States already conducted the largest bilateral trade relationship and to present day still do in the world, and Canada-United States trade relations already allowed trade without national taxes and tariffs, NAFTA allowed Mexico to experience a similar duty-free trade. The Free Trade Agreement allowed for the elimination of tariffs that had previously been in place on United States-Mexico trade. Trade volume has steadily increased annually, and in 2010, surface trade between the three NAFTA nations reached an all-time historical increase of 24.3% or $791 billion. The NAFTA trade bloc GDP is the world's largest with $17.617 trillion. This is in part attributed to the fact that the economy of the United States is the world's largest national economy. The country had a nominal GDP of approximately $14.7 trillion in 2010. The countries of NAFTA are also some of each other's largest trade partners. The United States is the largest trade partner of Canada and Mexico, while Canada and Mexico are each other's third largest trade partners. The Caribbean trade bloc CARICOM came into agreement in 1973 when it was signed by 15 Caribbean nations. As of 2000, CARICOM trade volume was $96 billion. CARICOM also allowed for the creation of a common passport for associated nations. In the past decade, the trade bloc focused largely on free trade agreements, and under the CARICOM Office of Trade Negotiations, free trade agreements have been signed into effect. Integration of Central American economies occurred under the signing of the Central American Common Market Agreement in 1961. This was the first attempt to engage the nations of this area into stronger financial cooperation. The recent implementation of the Central American Free Trade Agreement has left the future of the CACM unclear. The Central American Free Trade Agreement was signed by 5 Central American countries, the Dominican Republic, and the United States. The focal point of CAFTA is to create a free trade area similar to that of NAFTA. In addition to the United States, Canada also has relations in Central American trade blocs. Currently under proposal, the Canada-Central American Free Trade Agreement would operate much the same as CAFTA with the United States does. These nations also take part in intercontinental trade blocs. Mexico takes a part in the G3 Free Trade Agreement with Colombia and Venezuela and has a trade agreement with the EU. The United States has proposed and maintained trade agreements under the Transatlantic Free Trade Area between itself and the European Union, the US Middle East Free Trade Area between numerous Middle Eastern nations and itself, and the Trans-Pacific Strategic Economic Partnership between Southeast Asian nations, Australia, and New Zealand. Span transport/span. None. Communications. A shared telephone system known as the North American Numbering Plan is an integrated telephone numbering plan of 24 countries and territories, the United States and its territories, Canada, Bermuda, and 17 Caribbean nations. Culture. The cultures of North America are diverse. The United States and English Canada have many cultural similarities, while French Canada has a distinct culture from Anglophone Canada, which is protected by law. Since United States was formed from portions previously part of the Spanish Empire and then independent Mexico, and there has been considerable and continuing immigration of Spanish speakers from south of the U.S. Mexico border. In the southwest of the U.S. there are many Hispanic cultural traditions and considerable bilingualism. Mexico and Central America are part of Latin America and are culturally distinct from Anglophone and Francophone North America. However, they share with the United States the establishment of post-independence governments that are federated representative republics with written constitutions dating from their founding as nations. Canada is a federated parliamentary democracy under a constitutional monarchy. Canada's constitution dates to 1867, with Confederation, in the British North America Act, but not until 1982 did Canada have the power to amend its own constitution. Canada's francophone heritage has been enshrined in law since the British Parliament passed the Quebec Act of 1774. In contrast to largely Protestant Anglo settlers in North America, French-speaking Canadians were Catholic and with the Quebec Act were guaranteed freedom to practice their religion, restored the right of the Catholic Church to impose tithes for its support, and established French civil law in most circumstances. The distinctiveness of French language and culture has been codified in Canadian law, so that both English and French are designated official languages. The U.S. has no official language, but its national language is English. The Canadian government took action to protect Canadian culture by limiting non-Canadian content in broadcasting, creating the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission to monitor Canadian content. In Quebec, the provincial government established the Quebec Office of the French Language, often called the Language Police by Anglophones, which mandates the use of French terminology and signage in French. Since 1968 the unicameral legislature has been called the Quebec National Assembly. Saint Jean-Baptiste Day, June 24, is the national holiday of Quebec and celebrated by Francophone Canadians throughout Canada. In Quebec, the school system was divided into Catholic and Protestant, so-called confessional schools. Anglophone education in Quebec has been increasingly undermined. Latino culture is strong in the southwest of the U.S., as well as Florida, which draws Latin Americans from many countries in the hemisphere. Northern Mexico, particularly in the cities of Monterrey, Tijuana, Ciudad Juárez, and Mexicali, is strongly influenced by the culture and way of life of the United States. Monterrey, a modern city with a significant industrial group, has been regarded as the most Americanized city in Mexico. Northern Mexico, the western United States and Alberta, Canada share a cowboy culture. The Anglophone Caribbean states have witnessed and participated in the decline of the British Empire and its influence on the region, and its replacement by the economic influence of Northern America in the Anglophone Caribbean. This is partly due to the relatively small populations of the English-speaking Caribbean countries, and also because many of them now have more people living abroad than those remaining at home. Greenland has experienced many immigration waves from northern Canada, e.g. the Thule people. Therefore, Greenland shares some cultural ties with the indigenous peoples of Canada. Greenland is also considered Nordic and has strong Danish ties due to centuries of colonization by Denmark. Popular culture: sports. The US and Canada have major sports teams that compete against each other, including baseball, basketball, hockey, and soccer/football. Canada, Mexico, and the US submitted a joint bid to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The following table shows the most prominent sports leagues in North America, in order of average revenue. Canada has a separate Canadian Football League from the US teams. The Native American game of lacrosse is considered a national sport in Canada. Curling is an important winter sport in Canada, and the Winter Olympics includes it in the roster. The English sport of cricket is popular in parts of Anglophone Canada and very popular in parts of the former British Empire, but in Canada is considered a minor sport. Boxing is also a major sport in some countries, such as Mexico, Panama, and Puerto Rico, and it's considered one of the main individual sports in the United States. See also: North American Union, United States of America, Flags of North America, List of cities in North America, Outline of North America, Table Manners in North America.